My sister stole my invention, but karma struck at the patent office. Emma sat at her cluttered kitchen table, staring blankly at the rejection letter from the patent office. The fluorescent light above flickered intermittently, casting an uneven glow over months of painstaking work spread across the worn wooden surface. Blueprints, sketches, and technical specifications were scattered like fallen leaves, each one representing countless sleepless nights spent perfecting her revolutionary design for a sustainable water filtration system. She had poured her soul into this project, driven by memories of their childhood summers spent volunteering at underprivileged communities where clean water was a luxury rather than a basic right. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her phone, scrolling through old messages that documented her sister Clara's transformation from supportive sibling to calculating opportunist. It had started innocently enough, Emma sharing her ideas during family dinners, Clara asking thoughtful questions about the technical aspects. Their relationship had always been complicated. 10 years apart in age, they'd grown up more like acquaintances than sisters. Yet when Emma began developing her invention, Clara had suddenly taken an unusual interest, offering to help with market research and business planning. The betrayal came gradually, almost imperceptibly. First, there were the casual requests to review Emma's notes, then the sudden business trips Clara claimed were for networking but conveniently coincided with Emma's major breakthroughs. Emma remembered the exact moment realization dawned, finding Clara's laptop open to a draft patent application in their shared family home, the technical descriptions matching her own work word for word. The dates confirmed what she'd feared. Clara had been systematically documenting and appropriating her ideas for months. What hurt most wasn't just the theft itself, but the calculated way Clara had manipulated their family dynamics to cover her tracks. During holiday gatherings, Clara would subtly steer conversations toward her supposed entrepreneurial ventures, dropping hints about her innovative water filtration project while Emma sat silently, paralyzed by the knowledge that her own family wouldn't believe her if she spoke up. Their parents, proud of Clara's apparent success, had even begun referring to it as Clara's invention in casual conversation. The depth of Clara's deception became fully apparent when Emma received the official notification from the patent office. Her application had been flagged as a duplicate, with Clara's submission predating hers by mere weeks. The irony cut deep. Emma's meticulous documentation of her development process, meant to protect her intellectual property, now worked against her as Clara's team argued that such detailed records could have been fabricated after the fact. Every late night spent perfecting her design, every sacrifice made in pursuit of her vision, seemed to have been for nothing. As Emma stared at the rejection letter, she noticed something peculiar about the patent office's response. A small discrepancy in the technical specifications caught her eye, a minor error that she herself had deliberately included in her initial designs as a personal signature of sorts. This wasn't just any mistake, it was one that only someone intimately familiar with her original work would have replicated. The discovery sent a shiver down her spine, confirming what she had suspected all along. Clara hadn't just stolen her idea, she had taken her entire developmental process, flaws and all. The revelation sparked something within Emma, not anger, but a fierce determination to fight back. She began meticulously gathering evidence, starting with the digital trail of their communications. Every email, text message, and voice note became a potential piece of ammunition in her battle to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Her small apartment transformed into a command center, with color-coded timelines and cross-reference documentation covering every available surface. What had once been a space filled with creative inspiration now resembled a detective's investigation room. Her research led her to Dr. Patricia Monroe, a retired patent attorney who had specialized in intellectual property disputes before moving to Emma's town. Their meeting took place in a quaint cafe where Dr. Monroe listened intently, her sharp eyes missing nothing as Emma laid out her case. When Emma showed her the timeline of events and the peculiar replication of her deliberate error, Dr. Monroe's expression shifted from professional interest to something approaching awe. "This isn't just a case of intellectual theft," she said finally. "This is a textbook example of how the patent system can be exploited by those with greater resources." Under Dr. Monroe's guidance, Emma began building her counter-argument. They discovered that Clara's legal team had filed their application using an expedited review process, one that required substantial financial backing that Clara couldn't possibly have possessed on her modest salary. The trail of payments led them to uncover a network of shell companies and questionable financial transactions that painted a picture of systematic manipulation far beyond what Emma had initially suspected. Each new discovery added another layer to the complex web of deceit surrounding her stolen invention. As they delved deeper, Emma found herself facing unexpected challenges. Her attempts to gather physical evidence were met with increasingly aggressive resistance from Clara's side, including subtle threats disguised as concerned family interventions. Her parents, still unaware of the full extent of Clara's actions, began pressuring her to let go of this obsession and focus on more practical pursuits. The isolation grew heavier with each passing day, yet paradoxically, it also strengthened her resolve. She realized that this fight was no longer just about reclaiming her invention, it was about standing up against a system that favored privilege over merit, connections over genuine innovation. Dr. Monroe introduced Emma to a community of inventors who had faced similar battles, their stories both heart-wrenching and inspiring. There was Marcus, whose medical device concept had been appropriated by his university's commercialization department, Priya, whose software algorithm had been quietly absorbed into her company's product line without credit or compensation, and Ahmed, whose green energy solution had been patented by a multinational corporation after chance presentation at a conference. Their shared experiences created a support network that sustained Emma through the darkest moments of her struggle. One particularly revealing conversation with Marcus shed light on the broader implications of her case. "You're not just fighting for your invention," he explained during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "You're challenging the very foundation of how we value and protect innovation in this country. If we let people with resources steamroll over genuine creators, we're essentially telling everyone else that their ideas don't matter unless they have the right connections or bank account." This perspective transformed Emma's personal battle into something much larger, a crusade for fairness in the innovation ecosystem. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Emma discovered a series of encrypted files buried deep within her old backup drives. With Dr. Monroe's help, she managed to decrypt them, revealing hours of recorded brainstorming sessions where Clara could clearly be heard acknowledging Emma's sole authorship of the core concepts. These audio files contained not just admissions but detailed discussions about how to present the invention as Clara's own work. The recordings captured moments where Clara explicitly discussed strategies for timing her patent application to coincide with Emma's planned submission date, ensuring maximum impact in undermining her sister's claims. More damning was the discovery of Clara's communications with a shadowy figure known only as the broker, an individual who appeared to specialize in facilitating corporate takeovers of independent inventions. Through these exchanges, Emma learned that Clara had been approached early in the development process, offered a substantial sum to deliver the completed invention to a consortium of industrial players interested in controlling sustainable water technology. The emails outlined a sophisticated plan involving multiple layers of obfuscation, including the creation of fake development timelines and the strategic placement of misleading technical papers in academic journals to establish a false paper trail of prior art. As Emma processed this information, she realized the scope of the conspiracy extended far beyond family betrayal. Major corporations had been watching her progress, waiting for the perfect moment to appropriate her work through Clara's willing participation. The deliberate error she had included in her designs, originally meant as a personal signature, now served as concrete proof of Clara's plagiarism, as it appeared verbatim in the consortium's internal documents alongside time-stamped communications showing exactly when Clara had transferred the information. These revelations forced Emma to confront an uncomfortable truth. Clara's actions weren't merely opportunistic, they were part of a calculated corporate strategy to control emerging environmental technologies. The water filtration system represented more than just an innovative design, it threatened to disrupt established markets and profit structures in the water treatment industry. By stealing the invention, Clara and her corporate backers aimed to bury its true potential beneath layers of bureaucracy and restrictive licensing agreements, ensuring that its benefits would never reach the communities Emma had originally intended to help. The weight of this knowledge settled heavily on Emma's shoulders. What had started as a personal vendetta had evolved into a moral imperative. She wasn't just fighting to reclaim her invention, she was battling to preserve the integrity of technological advancement itself. The recordings and documents she had uncovered painted a chilling picture of how easily groundbreaking ideas could be co-opted by those with power and resources, transforming innovations meant to benefit humanity into tools for maintaining corporate dominance. Determined to expose the truth, Emma began methodically organizing her findings into a comprehensive dossier. She worked late into the nights, cross-referencing timestamps, tracing digital footprints, and mapping out the complex web of connections between Clara, the broker, and the corporate entities involved. Each piece of evidence she uncovered revealed another layer of the conspiracy, from shell companies set up to launder research funds to fake academic profiles created to legitimize stolen intellectual property. The scale of the operation astounded her, but more surprising was the number of respected institutions implicated in the scheme: universities, research labs, and even government agencies that had turned a blind eye to the appropriation of independent inventions. Her growing understanding of the situation brought unexpected allies into her corner. Environmental activists, upon learning about the potential of her water filtration system, rallied to her cause, recognizing the importance of keeping such technology freely accessible. Independent journalists, hungry for a story that exposed corporate malfeasance, began discreetly investigating the connections she had uncovered. Most surprisingly, several former employees of the involved corporations reached out, offering insider information about similar schemes targeting other innovators in the green technology sector. Yet with each new ally came increased pressure from Clara's side. Legal threats escalated from polite warnings to outright harassment, with corporate lawyers attempting to intimidate Emma into silence. Her social media accounts were flooded with coordinated attacks, painting her as a bitter failure trying to sabotage her successful sister's legitimate achievements. Even her workplace became hostile territory, with subtle suggestions that her obsession with the patent dispute was affecting her professional performance. Through it all, Emma maintained her focus, driven by a conviction that grew stronger with each passing day. She began documenting everything, every threat, every attempt at intimidation, every instance of gaslighting, creating a parallel record of the psychological warfare being waged against her. Dr. Monroe helped her understand that these tactics were standard operating procedure for those seeking to maintain control over stolen intellectual property, designed to wear down the original inventor until they either gave up or broke under the pressure. The turning point came unexpectedly during a routine visit to the local library. While researching historical patent disputes, Emma stumbled upon an elderly man reviewing old engineering journals. His weathered face lit up when she mentioned her field of work, and he introduced himself as Harold Jenkins, a retired engineer who had once worked on NASA's water purification systems. Their conversation quickly revealed that Harold had encountered similar corporate machinations during his career, though on a much larger scale. What started as a casual discussion evolved into a mentorship that would change the course of Emma's battle. Harold proved to be an invaluable resource, not just for his technical expertise but for his extensive network of contacts within the scientific community. Through him, Emma connected with Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a former patent examiner who had left the office under controversial circumstances after blowing the whistle on systematic favoritism in the review process. Dr. Rodriguez's insights into the inner workings of the patent office opened Emma's eyes to institutional weaknesses that Clara's team had expertly exploited. Together, they identified several irregularities in the handling of both patent applications that suggested internal complicity in the theft. The collaboration between Emma, Dr. Rodriguez, and Harold intensified as they worked to build an irrefutable case. They discovered that Clara's application had been fast-tracked through channels typically reserved for government contracts, despite having no legitimate claim to such priority status. More disturbingly, they found evidence suggesting that preliminary reviews had been deliberately delayed on Emma's original submission, creating the appearance of simultaneous development when their timelines actually showed clear precedents. These revelations pointed to a level of orchestration that went beyond simple familial betrayal. Their investigation attracted the attention of Senator Margaret Hayes, a longtime advocate for intellectual property reform. The senator's office reached out after hearing about Emma's case through Dr. Rodriguez's contacts, expressing interest in using her story to push for much-needed changes in patent law. However, their involvement came with complications. Corporate lobbyists immediately launched a counteroffensive, spreading misinformation about Emma's credibility and attempting to discredit her evidence. The media circus that followed divided public opinion, with some portraying her as a victim of corporate greed while others bought into the narrative of sibling rivalry gone wrong. Despite the mounting pressure, Emma found strength in her growing coalition of supporters. Former colleagues from her volunteer work in underserved communities came forward, testifying about how her invention had been inspired by real-world needs rather than profit motives. Environmental organizations provided expert analysis demonstrating the unique advantages of her design over existing solutions, highlighting how its suppression would negatively impact global water accessibility initiatives. Even some of Clara's former friends began reaching out, sharing their own experiences of manipulation and coercion at her hands. The complexity of the case expanded exponentially as international dimensions emerged. Emma learned that similar water filtration technologies had been suppressed in developing countries through comparable schemes, often involving the same corporate players. Her fight became emblematic of a larger struggle against global monopolies on essential technologies. This realization brought both hope and despair, hope that her case might spark meaningful change, but despair at the enormity of the forces arrayed against her. As the different threads of evidence converged, Emma faced difficult decisions about how to proceed. Should she pursue legal action against Clara personally, potentially destroying any remaining family ties? Or should she focus on exposing the corporate conspiracy, even if it meant her sister might escape direct consequences? The moral weight of these choices pressed heavily on her, compounded by the knowledge that whatever path she chose would have far-reaching implications beyond her immediate circle. Through it all, Emma maintained a rigorous documentation process, knowing that every detail might prove crucial in the final confrontation. She worked tirelessly with her team to organize the mountain of evidence into a coherent narrative that could withstand intense scrutiny. Dr. Rodriguez guided her through the technical aspects of patent law violations, while Harold provided historical context and engineering validation. Senator Hayes's office coordinated with federal investigators to ensure proper handling of the case, though political considerations sometimes slowed progress. The emotional toll of the investigation became increasingly apparent. Emma's once bright eyes now carried permanent shadows, testament to countless sleepless nights spent poring over documents and coordinating with her growing network of allies. Her small apartment had transformed into a fortress of information, with secure servers humming constantly in the background and encrypted communication devices scattered among the research materials. The warm, inviting space she had once called home now felt more like a war room, every surface covered with maps of corporate connections, timelines of suspicious activities, and technical specifications that told the story of her stolen invention. Yet amidst the chaos, Emma discovered reserves of strength she never knew she possessed. The support of her unlikely coalition sustained her through the darkest moments. Harold's grandfatherly wisdom provided comfort when doubts threatened to overwhelm her, while Dr. Rodriguez's relentless determination inspired her to keep pushing forward despite seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Even Senator Hayes's measured approach to reform reminded her that meaningful change required patience and strategic thinking, qualities she had to cultivate alongside her natural impulsiveness. Their collective efforts began yielding tangible results. Through Dr. Rodriguez's contacts within the Patent Office, they identified several key officials whose careers had been compromised by similar cases of corporate interference. These whistleblowers, though initially reluctant, eventually agreed to testify about systemic issues that had allowed Clara's scheme to succeed. Their testimonies painted a damning picture of how easily the patent review process could be manipulated by those with sufficient resources and influence. Meanwhile, Harold's engineering expertise helped validate Emma's original designs, demonstrating conclusively that her approach represented a significant technological leap rather than an incremental improvement as Clara's team had claimed. The case gained international attention when Emma's coalition linked her situation to similar instances of intellectual property theft worldwide. Environmental organizations from developing countries began sharing stories of how corporate interests had repeatedly blocked access to affordable water purification technologies. These connections transformed Emma's personal battle into a symbol of global resistance against technological monopolies. Journalists previously skeptical of her claims now pursued investigative pieces exposing the broader pattern of innovation suppression, amplifying her message to audiences far beyond her immediate community. However, the increased visibility came at a cost. Corporate pushback intensified, with Clara's backers launching sophisticated disinformation campaigns designed to undermine Emma's credibility. Social media platforms became battlegrounds where bots and paid trolls attempted to drown out legitimate discussion of her case. Her professional life suffered as well. Despite her employer's initial support, the constant media attention and corporate pressure eventually forced her into an indefinite leave of absence. Financial strain mounted as legal fees accumulated and her ability to work diminished, testing her resolve to continue the fight. Throughout these challenges, Emma's relationship with her family deteriorated further. Her parents, unable to reconcile their daughter's public allegations with their image of Clara as a successful entrepreneur, effectively cut ties with her. Family gatherings became tense affairs where her presence was either ignored or openly hostile. Childhood photographs were altered to remove her image, and family traditions she had cherished since childhood were rewritten to exclude her contributions. The emotional isolation weighed heavily, but Emma found solace in the new family she was building with her coalition of supporters. The complexity of the case continued to unfold as they uncovered additional layers of the conspiracy. Financial records revealed that Clara's operation had been part of a larger network targeting independent inventors in various fields, from renewable energy to medical technology. Each stolen invention followed a similar pattern: identification of promising innovations, recruitment of insiders to facilitate theft, and systematic suppression of the original creator's rights. The scale of the operation shocked even Dr. Rodriguez, whose experience with patent office corruption had prepared her for many things, but not this level of organized intellectual property appropriation. As the evidence mounted and public pressure grew, cracks began appearing in Clara's carefully constructed facade. Former associates started coming forward with their own stories of manipulation and coercion, while financial irregularities in her business dealings raised red flags with regulatory agencies. The corporate entities backing her operation found themselves under increasing scrutiny, their attempts to distance themselves from Clara's actions only drawing more attention to their involvement. Yet despite these developments, Emma remained acutely aware that the final resolution of her case would require more than just exposing the truth. It would demand a fundamental shift in how society valued and protected genuine innovation. In the midst of this turmoil, Emma experienced moments of profound clarity about her purpose. What had started as a personal quest for justice had evolved into a mission to create lasting change in the innovation ecosystem. She began working with Senator Hayes's office on draft legislation that would implement stricter controls on patent applications, establish independent oversight for expedited review processes, and provide better protection for independent inventors. These policy discussions gave her work new meaning, transforming her from a victim of intellectual theft into an advocate for systemic reform. The final pieces of the puzzle began falling into place when Emma's team discovered a critical vulnerability in Clara's defense strategy. While her corporate backers had anticipated many potential lines of attack, they had underestimated the significance of Emma's deliberate technical error, the one she had originally included as a personal signature. This seemingly minor detail had propagated through Clara's entire documentation process, creating an unbroken chain of evidence that directly linked her application to Emma's original work. More importantly, the error's presence in internal corporate communications demonstrated beyond doubt that Clara had knowingly submitted stolen intellectual property. With this breakthrough, Emma and her coalition prepared for the decisive phase of their campaign. They coordinated with federal investigators to execute simultaneous raids on key corporate offices, securing physical evidence that would corroborate their digital findings. Whistleblowers from within the patent office agreed to testify about specific instances of procedural manipulation in Clara's case, while international partners gathered supporting documentation from related incidents abroad. Senator Hayes scheduled a high-profile congressional hearing to address the broader implications of their findings, ensuring maximum exposure for their revelations. As the date for the hearing approached, Emma found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The young woman who had once sat alone in her kitchen, overwhelmed by betrayal and defeat, had transformed into a formidable force for change. Her alliance with Dr. Rodriguez, Harold, and the growing network of supporters represented more than just a coalition of convenience. It embodied the power of collective action against institutional injustice. The technical brilliance of her invention, once a source of personal pride, now symbolized the potential of human ingenuity when freed from corporate control. Yet amid these preparations, Emma remained painfully aware of the personal cost of her crusade. The relationships she had sacrificed, the opportunities she had foregone, and the emotional toll of constant conflict had left their mark. Late at night, when the hum of computers and the rustle of documents subsided, she would stare at old photographs of her family, wondering if reconciliation would ever be possible. The thought of facing Clara in court filled her with conflicting emotions: anger at the betrayal, sadness at the loss of their relationship, and determination to see justice done regardless of personal consequences. The complexity of the upcoming confrontation weighed heavily on her mind. While the evidence against Clara and her corporate backers seemed overwhelming, Emma understood that legal victories didn't always translate into meaningful change. The system that had allowed this theft to occur remained fundamentally flawed, its mechanisms still vulnerable to exploitation by those with sufficient resources and influence. True reform would require more than just winning her case. It would demand sustained effort to reshape the cultural and institutional frameworks surrounding innovation and intellectual property. As she reviewed the final preparations with her team, Emma felt a mixture of apprehension and resolve. The coming days would determine not just the fate of her invention, but the future of countless other innovations currently trapped in similar cycles of appropriation and suppression. Her story had become bigger than herself, intertwined with the hopes and dreams of independent creators worldwide, who looked to her case as a potential turning point in the fight for fair recognition and protection of their work. The battle ahead promised to be brutal, but Emma knew she was ready, armed with truth, supported by allies, and driven by a purpose that transcended personal grievances. The morning of the congressional hearing arrived with a sense of inevitability that hung heavy in the air. Emma stood before the assembled committee, her voice steady as she presented her case, each word backed by mountains of evidence and months of preparation. The room crackled with tension as Clara's legal team attempted to deflect and deny, their arguments crumbling under the weight of irrefutable proof. Yet as the proceedings unfolded, Emma noticed something unexpected, a subtle shift in Clara's demeanor, a flicker of something that looked remarkably like genuine remorse crossing her sister's face. This observation complicated Emma's feelings about the outcome she had fought so hard to achieve. As witness after witness testified about the systemic issues enabling intellectual property theft, and as corporate representatives squirmed under questioning from Senator Hayes and her colleagues, Emma found herself grappling with an uncomfortable question. What did true justice look like in a situation where personal betrayal intersected with institutional corruption? The answer, she realized, might require more courage than anything she had faced so far, the courage to consider forgiveness alongside accountability, and to recognize that sometimes the greatest victories come not from destruction but from transformation.